Hello everyone, it's Raza Von Werder, aka Kelly Everts, talking about right now. I began to explain how I was chosen to preach the message of Fatima in front of the White House in June 1978. The entire experience, the message which was presented changed the world. It ended the Cold War, and it ended the threat of nuclear annihilation, which was then present because Russia and the United States were at odds, and they were in a Cold War. It was very serious. There was a very strong anti-war, anti-nuclear war contingent, which broke up after communism fell. So one of the keys, this is a very complicated, big subject, and it is really part of my life, but it's a separate section of my life. And I'm not going to get into every important detail. I'm just going to gloss over the main parts and ask you to please take a look on the Kelly Everts website for the entire detailed analysis of how the power of Our Lady of Fatima was manifested after I gave the speech. The speech was promoted coast to coast in America. People began to do what the Holy Lady asked them to do, which was pray the rosary for the conversion of Russia, or nations will be annihilated. And people, my girlfriend Betty Jane Alsop, who arranged the whole thing, she told me that when she went to church, and she went to church every day, they were organized praying the rosary for the conversion of Russia. They were. And this message, and my preaching it, because I was a stripteaser, so it was very unusual, and it was like noteworthy, like it made good news because it was an anomaly. And so I was on front pages coast to coast from here to California. In fact, I got a call from the Shapiro Lightman Agency that they wanted to do a movie of my life because of this being on the front page of the Los Angeles Times. It fell through at that time, but it's still going to happen. Why me? Why was I chosen? It was not a coincidence. It was not for nothing, as they say. It was not for nothing. This is a book I published. Whoops, got the wrong way. This is a book I published. I only had $6,000 in the bank, and I spent $5,000 to publish a book for Our Holy Mother called Mother of the Immaculate Heart. And the back of it tells the vision, which I read in the last chapter, that I had while I was in Washington of Our Lady. Why was I chosen? Well, for one thing, my mind was on it. When I was a kid growing up, my father used to be the main speaker at every Lithuanian gathering. We had a very rich culture in our community, our Lithuanian community. We had to appear once a year. Each child had to show and demonstrate some sort of a talent or a skill. You could read poetry, you could read from a hard Lithuanian book. If you were a kid, you pick up a big hard book and read from it to show how well you read in Lithuanian. You could sing or dance. And my father at these gatherings was always the main speaker. And one thing he never failed to claim was, we must get Russia out of our country. Because our country was occupied by communist Russia, as was Poland and many other small countries. The Baltic countries, they were occupied by communists, by Stalin. I also heard about Our Lady of Fatima. Our Lady of Fatima said, pray the rosary for the conversion of Russia or nations will be annihilated. It was on my mind. It was in my mind. I never forgot it. I never forgot it. When it came time for me to be, by destiny, there, and I gave the speech, the entire Washington press came out to hear me give my speech in Lafayette Park in the message of Our Lady of Fatima. It was all men except one woman reporter. Obviously, they came out because of the curiosity, but there was more to it than that. It doesn't matter why they came out. The press, they had me on the news several times. They had me on the front page of the living section of the Washington Post, one of the world's most prestigious newspapers. And of course, they wrote about me in a facetious manner. Of course, everyone was writing about me in a facetious manner, but my work was not facetious. It was not a joke. My work was serious. My work was ordained by God. I was anointed by God as being a stripteaser. That was just a job. But God used that notoriety, that novelty, the novelty of me being who I was as a stripteaser. Had I been a nun, what could I have done? If I had given a speech in front of the White House, how many people would have come out? How much publicity would it have gotten had I been a nun in a convent, a nun in robes? So I was a nun, but I was a nun in a striptease outfit. I was a sexy nun, a nun with voluptuousness, a nun with Playboy and penthouse publicity, a nun who took her clothes off to save souls, a nun who gave sermons in front of the theaters and nightclubs, in the theaters and nightclubs where I worked. I was a servant of God. That's what a nun is, a servant of God. I was a messenger of God. I did what God told me. I did what I felt God would want me to do. I was chosen. Now, what happened after the speech is that her Immaculate Heart, she said, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. Her Immaculate Heart did triumph. Did triumph. A series of events happened. A series of events. The Polish Pope from behind the Iron Curtain, who was half Lithuanian, me, Lithuanian, half Lithuanian. His name is Karolis, was Karolis, which means king, Karolis. That's a Lithuanian name meaning king, Karolis, Karolis. It was the first time that someone other than an Italian got elected to the papacy that I know of. Maybe there was one hundreds of years ago at one time, and it was the first pope ever from behind the Iron Curtain. That was crucial. Behind the Iron Curtain. Then Gorbachev came into power, and he preached glasnost, a softening up, perestroika, glasnost, a softening up. His wife's name was Rasa, same as me, Rasa, in Russian, Rasa. His wife had my name. And President Reagan came into being. It was the Holy Lady that got these three key world leaders into power. And I explained this entire thing. When the Holy Father was shot, and they shot him because he was from the Iron Curtain. When he woke up out of his coma, the first thing he said was, "Bring me the message of Fatima." And he took the bullet they put that missed his heart, the bullet from there, into the crown of Our Lady of Fatima in the statue. And he then, up until then, he didn't do the consecration of Russia, which he was supposed to, according to the message of Fatima. He didn't do it. And then he did it. The first time he did it was not effective. It didn't work right. Maybe enough cardinals didn't show up. And the second time enough cardinals showed up. And Lucia was a contemplative nun, and the first time she said it didn't work right. And the second time she said it was satisfactory to the Holy Lady. Please read about that on my website, Kelly Everts. I'm not giving you every detail here. I'm just glossing over it. Thank you. Kelly Everts. The Lady of Fatima message. Please go there and see.